So are we live, Bill?
We are currently live and attendees are joining as we speak.
Okay, well, we'll give.
And there's Ariel.
All right, that's great. Well, we'll give just a moment or two for everybody to get logged on, and then we'll get started. All right. Well, it seems like we have 7 attendees, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started, and others can certainly join as they're able. But I would like to welcome everyone to today's informational webinar for Special Projects Grants. My name is Lisa Hanson. I am President and CEO of CultureWorks. Karen Maynard typically joins us. She's not able to be with us today, so we will do our best to fill in for her. But also joining us today are the panelists for this year's review of Special Projects Grants applications. So I'm just going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves. And Ron, why don't we start with you?
I'm Ron Anderson. I'm a retired educator. Spent more than 30 years in Greene County schools and retired to become a consultant. And I've written a lot of grants in my lifetime, and I'm interested in all of the arts.
Great. Don?
Hi, I'm Don Jones. I'm an independent grant writer. I worked for 16 years as a grant writer for the Dayton Contemporary Dance Company. So I'm familiar with the arts world in Dayton and the arts funders, and we're always grateful to CultureWorks for all the support it's given to DCDC and other companies. So it's nice to pay back to CultureWorks in this way. I'm no longer work. My clients are in Colorado. At this time, I left DCDC after spending almost two decades there. And I'm in different sectors. I wanted to try out new parts of the nonprofit sector, but I've been grant writing probably a quarter century. That's pretty much what I do in terms of fundraising. So thank you.
Thank you, Don. Iris.
Yeah, hi, Iris Jurgens. I am the Director of Development and Grants for the Council on Legal Education Opportunities. And I have been involved in development for a very long time, and also have a tremendous amount of grant experience and a great interest in local arts. I've been supportive of the arts, been engaged in the arts, and just really love getting both worlds together and being able to contribute to the community that way. So welcome to everyone that's on the panel attending, and looking forward to this.
Great, thank you, Iris. And Ariel.
Good morning. I guess it's afternoon now. I'm actually in transit, so I apologize. As soon as I get to where I'm going, I will turn my camera on. I am Ariel Walker. I'm the Grants and Research Officer for the Dayton Art Institute. Before this, I spent 14 years with the city of Dayton, and before that, I was with Wright State University. So I've been around the community for a while, and this is my second year on the panel, and I'm really excited to work with all of you.
Great. Well, thank you, Ariel. Thanks to all of you for your time and dedication to this process. And we're grateful for you attending today to help us provide some additional information for those that are seeking special projects grants for this year. I would like to just say that this is intended to allow applicants to the Special Projects Grant Program an opportunity to hear directly from grant panelists about what makes a strong application. Just a few meeting reminders. Attendees are set to listen only mode, and this is to cut down on background noise. So to submit your questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And Bill Perry has joined us. He is a member of the CultureWorks team, and he will be assisting moderating today. Also be aware the session is being recorded and it will be posted to the CultureWorks website later in the week. So if you feel like you want to reference some of the information shared today, feel free to go on and listen to the session again. So we are going to begin the question and answer discussion. I would like to remind applicants that the special projects grant applications are scored by an independent panel using an established scoring rubric across 3 main scoring areas: project quality and artistic vibrancy, community impact and engagement, and the ability to complete and manage the project. These scoring areas are explained in detail in the Special Projects Grant Program Guidelines, which applicants can find on the cultureworks.org website, and you click Apply for Funding and then Special Projects. We have prepared some questions in advance based on frequently asked questions from past cycles. So this is the time for applicants to ask your own questions, but we'll kick things off with 1 or 2 of those questions. And then hopefully you all will get that conversation rolling. And panelists, I encourage you to jump in at any point if you have some words of wisdom. That is what we're here for today. All right. I think that we can go ahead and get started. So I'm going to kick us off with a question from the Project Quality and Artistic Vibrancy scoring section. So the project description portion of the application serves as both an introduction to and an overview of a project. We often say that a strong project description will paint a clear picture of project activities. When reading a project description, what details do you want to see in that part of the proposal? Panelist?
I'll just start the ball rolling. A sequence of thought, a kind of narrative. A grant writing is a kind of technical writing, but it is also storytelling. So usually if you're applying for funding, it means that you need funds to initiate a certain project. And the reason why you have that project is because of a certain need, a need in the community, something that is lacking, or something to enrich the community or your organization, which in order for it to do its function, to fulfill its mission. So a clear, what I like is if it's overall project description, well, why the project? So you got to start, I always start with, well, what's the problem? There is a problem X. We don't have enough, I don't know, ski mask. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be flippant, but you know what I'm saying? We don't have enough, maybe I work for a dance company at one time, not enough dancers. I mean, I want to do this dance, and we need to hire more. That's our problem. Clear description of the problem and your solution. And I would stick to the facts, make it as concrete as you can, but also because it is grant writing and you're asking for money, for funding, there is an emotional part of it. I mean, there's a part that has to be sincere, of course. You have to show that there is an element of passion, of a real commitment to your mission. It can't just be dry. At the same time, it has to be factual. So you don't want it to be sappy, but you also need to have that balance. So I don't want to take up the time, but that's it in a hit and run.
I'll jump in, and I would like to think, at least in my opinion, that the most important question in the grant application is where you ask the applicants in one sentence to be able to say what the project is about. I'm asking for this much money to do this and such. And as I read through applications, I read that sentence, and then I'm left wondering how the rest of the activities have anything to do with that at all. That there's not an alignment, that it's sort of, that sentence might say one of the things that they want to do, but then others are added later on. So to really just take some time and sit back and think to yourself, if I had to say this to a neighbor or someone in one sentence, that would really encompass the gist of what we're trying to do, what we're asking for funds for. I think that's very important, and it needs to be clear. It doesn't need to be flowery or verbose. It's just, it meets a clear need, and this is what we are asking money for. So I think that helps. Often, I was going to say sometimes, but oftentimes I have to read proposals 3 and 4 times before I have a gist of what they're asking for. And then after I've had a chance to like digest all of that, oh, this is a very strong proposal. But I think if there's more thought put into it, I know when I'm writing, I know what I'm thinking, but the reader doesn't. And so to have someone else read it back, or several people read it back and say, is it clear what we're trying to do here? Can you tell just by reading? Because the applications aren't that long. But if you have to read them 3 or 4 times, it makes it difficult.
I'd like to just jump in and mention that something that I think is sort of a good practice is when you write your statement and what you're asking for, to go back and look at your budget. You put your things together, go back and look at your budget and what you're asking for, and make sure that if you can incorporate that, that you include that as you're painting this picture of introducing the project that you want, where, and if you have to say, this is what we have, and this is where, and this funding will get us to, point B, then include a bit of detail on that so that we can join you in that vision. And because, I really, set aside time to get as immersed as I can in each grant application. And I think that when you look at the budget, it just sort of takes you full circle as you're completing that application. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
Okay, so I'm thinking that we have another question to address. Bill, did you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, I had a question in the Q&A saying our organization is applying for capacity building grant. Please explain what you need for work samples, sample marketing materials, and evaluation tool to attach to the application.
You probably want to have attachments that are as close to the project for which you're asking for funding. If you're doing a particular summer school program, do you have evaluations from a last summer school, or maybe it was a retreat for young people. If it's not exactly the same, then it is somewhat parallel or analogous. Evaluation is always, we can talk about that. That's the funnest part of an application, and I'm being sarcastic. So, is the program you're evaluating similar to the one that you're applying for? Apples to apples as much as you can.
That's the only question I have at this point in time, but keep them coming, everyone, if you have more thoughts, more things.
Well, okay. Well, I'll just put another question out there. So what kind of information is most useful to you when evaluating the quality of the artistic creative personnel involved in a project? Iris?
Yeah, what I look for, I really look to see the background of the people that are involved. And something that I'll share that I've kind of gotten as feedback, from other, with other grants and other grants that I've worked on is you want to include the quality of the people that are involved. And if you have very high level folks, you want to include that. That's not going to take away from the appearance of your organization needing the funding. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, because I know that sometimes people are hesitant to say, well, we have this high level person involved. And so then how does that translate into our need? That's apples to oranges right there. So please make sure that when you have someone to consider, that is definitely part of your program or is going to help move your program forward, to include that information, because that really does, you're trying to paint a picture, and anything that you can do to try to elevate that is always very helpful. And that's all that particular piece does. It doesn't take away from our looking at you and saying, well, gosh, your budget says this, how are you able to? No, we're not judging that part. All we're judging is the quality, your investment, the personal investment, and your desire to get your quality proposal, to bring it to life. So that's just a recommendation.
I can jump in here too. I'm always looking for the purpose of the grant. What is the outcome you're trying to achieve, and are the people involved able to achieve that outcome? So if you are a performing arts organization and the staff that you choose to highlight are all visual artists, are those people going to be able to get there, or do you really need to have a performing artist leading that program? So I'm always looking not necessarily to the organization itself, but for the program that you're trying to implement, are the people involved going to be able to achieve that goal?
I would like to just jump in and say that it's my impression that this has always been a strength of the applicants, that I don't read through the applications and think, oh my goodness, no one's qualified. But that doesn't mean that you can ignore this question. We still want to read that. We still need that information. But it shouldn't be a frightening question for everyone to struggle with. Oh my goodness, I don't have the world's greatest this or that, because it's been a strength, I think, not something to shy away from. But as Iris says, we need to see it in print. We need to see those details to document that.
Great. Thank you, Ron. I believe we've actually got a couple more questions in the queue. Bill, do you want to provide one of those questions?
Sure, and actually keep it on coming. This is great, everyone. So we have two that are actually mural based. So the first one, we're planning on painting / repainting murals. As an all volunteer organization, we don't have any staff. Can you discuss the differences in budget cost categories, support / admin / artist fees? And then to go on top of that, we have a separate question. What sorts of metrics are you looking for in evaluating a graphic outside the mural? So I suppose the first thing, discussing the differences in budget cost categories, support, artist, and admin fees for a volunteer organization.
That's sort of a tough one to address without a lot of other details. I'm just trying to take it, out of context, and I'm just wondering, I think more information about that, about who's being paid and being paid for what. Are the volunteers going to be painting the mural, or are you going to be hiring artists to paint the mural? So a lot of other details we would need to read more about that, I think, in order to respond to that. One thing that comes to mind in reading other proposals, when you think about something like a mural, I'm thinking about how many people will see it. I remember reading something in the past of an art installation. I thought no one will ever see it. So there are just a lot of considerations. I think we look at it as a project as a whole.
I think also to consider additional fees, perhaps, because even as a volunteer organization where you're working on either enhancing, renewing, refreshing a mural, there's going to be expenses. And as a volunteer committee, I've been on volunteer committees where you do have to come up with a budget. There may be a fee for a permit. There may be fees for the paint. There may be fees for a consultant to come and take a look at, what you're trying to do so that you do things correctly. Or it may require just additional things that are outside of a volunteer level type of activity. So I would put all of those into your budget and request that, because that's what's going to get you to success. And I would also include that as you're painting the picture for us, that you mentioned, this is an organization that's put together by volunteers, and maybe get your umbrella, whatever the situation is with the organization, but make sure that you're considering all of those details as you're thinking about asking for funds. And also, as he mentioned, as far as like, where's the location, and what is the next, what is the impact that you see of this, and be sure you paint that picture, if whatever the community is that you talk about the enhancement, the enrichment, and who's going to, consider who's going to look at it. And anyway, but definitely make sure that you have a detailed budget with regards to that.
We got a follow-up, so I just want to chime on
I
in.
would also,
Oh, go Ariel, please.
oh, I was just gonna say, I'm not sure, Lisa, who the staff lead is on this grant, but I would also encourage you to reach out to the staff lead if you have questions about where things go in the columns and rows of the budget. My experience with the Culture Works staff has always been incredible, and they have always helped work through exactly where things need to go. If your project doesn't quite make sense the way they're asking the questions specific to budget, I would always feel comfortable reaching out, and just know that that's not going to be held against you in any way, shape, or form. They're there to help you. So please use your staff liaison for that sort of question when it's really detailed like that.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Ariel. Karen Maynor leads our grant making program, and Hannah Gregory is assisting right now, and both of them make themselves available and would love to answer your questions. So please do not hesitate.
Great, thanks. Going along with this theme, we're hiring an artist to paint the mural and prepare the service for repainting. Should artist costs include equipment rental, paint, and artist fees? Or should all of these be broken or separately, even if the artist is doing all of the work?
Now, do you mind reading that one more time, Bill?
Sure. So we're hiring an artist to paint the mural and prepare the service for repainting. Should artist costs include equipment rental, paint, and artist fees, or should all of those be broken or out separately, even if the artist is doing all the work?
I can just sort of answer that generically. I always appreciate more detail, that I'm not left ever having to guess. And so unless you're limited by the number of characters or that the electronic documentation allows you to put in there, more is better. The more information using Iris is paint the picture, the more detail about what that artist is going to be doing that they're being paid for, and breaking it down. I don't know if it needs to be to the penny, but some sort of description of what that job encompasses, and the money's not just going for this, but it's including all of these sub jobs to be done. So I want the detail.
Yeah, and it also helps build your case for funding. So definitely adding that detail.
And if I may just jump in there, I know I'm not a panelist in this, but adding that, separating out the cost of supplies really shows that you know what it takes to complete that project. You thought through the number of cans of paint or whatever the case may be. You've really thought through what those expenses are, and that detail, like Ron said, it's just so important. So I would encourage you to think through that, not package it all together, but to break it out.
While we're talking about murals, there was the question, what sort of metrics are you looking at in evaluating a graphic outside mural?
Evaluation is one of the most difficult parts of an application. Hence my prior sarcastic remark about being the most wonderful, because the arts are so hard to quantify. It really is qualitative, although a number of people who've seen the work, that could always be done. Of course, outside mural, how do you do that? You may want to take, as this is already thought of, I'm sure, but you could upload images of the mural to social media. What are your feedback? how many hits, we love it, whatever. Also, maybe invite other artists in the community or outside the community to come see it, and what do they think? You could say, well, so-and-so said this, maybe wrote an article or posted something on our website or Facebook or Instagram or whatever the case is, to get that feedback. The arts are notoriously difficult to evaluate. You have my total sympathies, but there are ways to do it in a creative way. Basically, community feedback, also vetted by others who are artists. A muralist from Columbus, Ohio, and say, hey, this is great, this is dynamite, and that's just like, well, this expert here likes our mural, along with Joe and Jane, who look at it and they post on your website, this is great, I love it, we need more, things like that.
I would like to build on that that idea and take it 3 giant steps backwards. And when we think about your goal, what are you trying to do? And I think if you would say, well, we're going to create a mural, I would say, well, why? And so what is the need? What is the goal? Are you trying to change someone's attitude? Are you trying to encapsulate history of a neighborhood? Are you trying to persuade? Are you trying to show some humor, get people to laugh, raise awareness? I would really want to know, before I even thought about evaluation, why are you creating this mural? Why? If it's just to enhance, then it's just decor. We need something pretty right here in this ugly, for this ugly building. That might be very legitimate, but you would evaluate that based on that's the need. But I'm guessing that there is a deeper reason that you're doing the mural, and I would like to read about that. And I think Don would say then that would drive a little bit of the evaluation.
Correct, yes.
Oh, I was going to add that if there's something in the community or something that has occurred that has been a catalyst for the creation of this project, that definitely needs to be included in your proposal, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. Culture works. We want to make a difference in the community. And if you can tie that into your organization's mission and build on that, that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for a project that will enhance your ability, perhaps to even serve the community. And, a mural can do that. Murals are, very profound. You see them, they're included on websites, they're included in fundraising appeals and items like that. And if that's something that, you envision as being part of, that's something that you really need to focus on stressing to us, because that's the name of the game. We want to make a difference in the community, as you do.
Bill, do you have any questions in the queue right now?
We do have a couple more. One
Okay.
to piggyback off of that one. One of our attendees has reminded people that the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission has average daily traffic to indicate views. So if you're looking for a location, thank you for sharing that information. Also, another question we have, we are applying for a grant to provide a storytelling workshop regarding letters of support and supporting documentation. Does that refer to a letter supporting the person who will be teaching the storytelling? I suppose the question is the letters of support, is it for the program or is it for the actual person teaching the program?
I would say that the letter is for the project. And I would talk to the people that are providing the letters of support and let them know who's going to be doing the program, and if that's what inspired them to want to provide this letter of support. But certainly you want your project highlighted in the letters of support.
Generally, yes, I agree. Generally, letters of support the applicant the artist is being hired by the applicant or engaged to do X, Y, and Z. But can the applicant, meaning the organization, can it do the work? And it's good that it can be vetted by those who provide such letters to support them.
I also think it's good, especially if you're doing a project that hires a third party, whether that's an artist or a musician. If you already have those people either under a contract or under agreement, that you note that in the narrative section that we are hiring XYZ artists under an agreement for this amount of money for this span of time to do this thing. You don't necessarily need the letter of support from that person, but identifying them and the nature of the relationship, either in the narrative section or in some other way, I think is really important, especially if it's a contractual relationship of some sort. You know, you're hiring a band to do something, to know that those people are already in agreement and under contract with you is helpful to us as we're reviewing it.
Okay.
And we do not have any questions in the queue at this point in time, but if anyone is feeling inspired by our panelists, feel free to drop them as we keep moving along.
Well, you know, I'll interject another thought here. So under community impact and engagement, getting the word out about a project is certainly key to project success. And a critique that we hear about often is about marketing and promotional plans. And they ask, is that their business as usual? Could you all go into a bit of detail about what this means and provide some examples of marketing and promotional efforts that go beyond business as usual?
So I think if you have a project that has a specific targeted audience that is different than your normal audience, being able to talk about outreach to that specific subset or group is really important. And that can be in any different way. That might be a radio ad, it might be social media, but being able to speak to how you're going to ensure that you are either engaging your current audience or how you're going to go about broadening your audience in a different way. Because if you're just working with the audience that you already use all the time, then you need to do things a little differently for this project to be successful. So really digging into where are our gaps and how are we going to address those gaps in communication are really important.
If you have the ability to have metrics, you know, to take good measure of your audience, maybe a click open rate, maybe actual people that received your marketing materials, all of those metrics are important as well. And any plans to measure that additionally is also very helpful for funding the project. And that's information that'll be useful to you with other funding opportunities, because that's something that you always want to know, because that defines the success of your event. If you're wanting to get from point A to point B, this is how you're going to measure that you've arrived or exceeded. And that's what we all want. So
what are some great methods of evaluation that you've seen in some other proposals in the past?
This, you know, I think Don said it right off the bat. This is probably one of the most difficult questions to answer, but yet one of the most important. And having written grants my whole life, it seems like I still struggle with this. Some grant proposals are no-brainers because you'll have lots of data that you can quantify and collect and prove a point or prove success or failure. For example, like in a school, it might be a rise in test scores or something. But when you get into the arts, it's a little bit different. I'm just thinking of an event that I went. It was the opera was doing a Mall in the Night Visitors for school audiences, and one thing I noticed, there wasn't an empty seat in the auditorium, which is quantifiable and measurable. And would be good data to have, as opposed to no one attended. But then something that really struck me is how I would be able to describe that. The kids were going out the door singing opera.
Mm-hmm.
and smiles on their faces. And I thought, if I would try to write that somehow, that I would want to see that kind of a response from an audience. Don, you have more experience with this. You might be able to jump into how do you describe these non-quantifiable outcomes?
Through a feedback, but what I wanted to say about marketing, DC hired a marketing firm several years ago, and today marketing is social media. I mean, yeah, you have your newspapers, but they're sort of Jurassic Park creatures, you know. And one thing I would say is this is a real hit and run. It may or may not help. Social media is king of the hill or queen of the hill. Get someone 35 and under, and I'm way not qualified for that. Who can what do, and by the way, we want young people to attend to the arts. I mean, I'm not, everybody's welcome, from seniors to babies or whatever, but you want to engage young people in the arts anyway. Find inventive, hire, consult someone who's really on social media, who has a digital brain from babyhood, under 35, whatever, younger millennials or Gen Zs, and ask them, how can we make this event? How can we draw audiences to social media? Otherwise, it does become business as usual if you left it to me, who grew up on newspapers or TV. So that may be one thing. It sort of helps and it sort of doesn't, because now you got to go find that person who can help you out with those ideas.
I think also you need to set up in your application the questions you're going to answer in your final report. And so when you are looking at what you want to achieve with your project, whether that's, you know, people in seats, or it's people who see your mural, or it's the school that your mural is on the side of. I mean, I think thinking all the way through from start to finish, you know, your relationship with CultureWorks is going to be for a year. And so thinking about, we're going to measure these 3 things, and here's how we're going to measure them. And then thinking that through to the final report, how am I going to tell that story? Yes, I need to say that there were 100 people in seats, but I also need to say that those people were so engaged that they left singing, and that's part of the narrative of your final report. So I don't know how you set that up necessarily in the beginning, because your goal is not necessarily that people leave singing, but you will always have that opportunity on the back end. And if that's an experience that you had in the previous season, that would be a good way to highlight it. In, you know, the 22 season, we had children leave singing, and that's why we want to expand this program, and here's what these dollars are going to do. And then thinking that all the way through to the back end of your final report, and how you're going to continue that narrative storyline.
Yeah, I maybe I've answered the wrong question. I thought we were on, everything that Ariel said is 100% great, but wasn't it about marketing and promotional? Lisa, were you asking that question about business as usual, you know, the usual marketing?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what I answered. So sorry if that's confusing. That was a marketing thing, but Ariel's point and Dron's point to evaluation, which we can continue with that some other part of the meeting, are absolutely correct as well. I just want the people to be confused. What I answered a marketing question, not an evaluation question. Sorry.
I think we had both going at once.
Yeah.
All good information though.
Okay.
Okay. How are we doing? Any questions,
There
Bill?
are no questions in the queue
None.
right now.
Okay, I'm gonna throw another point out there. And this comes from the section ability to complete and manage the project. So what are the key ways an organization can demonstrate its ability to complete and manage the project? Now, there are a few items that past panelists have highlighted, and I'll just mention a few of those. One is a detailed timeline. Another is evidence of completing similar projects in the past. Commitment from other project collaborators and information about them, such as consultants, marketing firms, and such. You want to go ahead and maybe give us a few more ideas about how to demonstrate their ability to complete the project?
You know, I'm looking at that in tandem with how realistic are the activities that are embedded in the project. And given the qualifications of an organization, or the size, or the number of people they have working on the project, can they do it? So it isn't just in isolation, you know, what are the qualifications of your staff or volunteers, but what is it they're about to do? If they describe something to me that no one would be able to do that in a year, or no one, so it goes hand in hand with how what the project is trying to accomplish and what the organization, what capacity they have. So I don't think there's a stock answer to that. But certainly that if they've done something similar in the past, that is really good, solid, something to go on. If they say we've never tried this before, then I would be really reading closely.
I think also a detailed plan, like a step-by-step plan on how they're going to implement the funded project is very critical. You want to know how they're going to do this once the funding is there, that we know, okay, now they're going to start by doing this. I think there needs to be a expectation, not to be negative, but also what is going to happen based on if you don't get 100% funding of what you're asking for, and what is that going to look like? Is that going to change the face of the program? And if it might, then let us know how. I mean, that may be that may be a catalyst in let's look at this again and see if we can't do more for this, because it's such an important project. I think it's also important to let us know if there are any additional funders. I mean, that is not going to impact your funding consideration. It's just a little bit more of a opportunity to just sort of stress how solid your project is. That you have, group Foundation A has funded us at this level to lay the groundwork. And that's why we're here on this project now and able to be making this request to take it a little bit further and to make a greater impact culturally in the community that comes back to our mission. So, just provide a real, I keep saying paint a picture, because that's exactly what we need. And sometimes, you need to, just sort of block and bridge. And if we don't get 100% funding, this is our alternative, and this is what we're going to do. And that's something very critical that we do look at. So.
Also, if it is a project where you've done 80%, you've done it before, but 20% is novel, then for that 20%, who will you hire, or who will you engage, or what will you do that is different this time to make sure that you're able to implement the 20% that is unprecedented? Because organizations want to grow and spread their wings. So make sure that you account for that budget-wise, but also in terms of going back to the qualifications of the artist, that kind of thing. What will your organization do differently to implement that 20% of the project that is truly novel?
Okay.
Nothing in the queue, so.
Nothing. All right. Well, I'm going to go back to project quality and artistic vibrancy. What other key factors do you look for when evaluating project quality? Items that past panelists have highlighted include some of the following: alignment to curriculum standards, if applicable; sample programs from past similar efforts that demonstrate typical artistic quality; evidence that artistic creative leadership is shaping the creative vision. An example is it's not an artistic project being led by someone with no artistic experience. And I know we've covered that in some detail today already. Evidence of cultural exchange and in capacity building. The applicant demonstrates an understanding of their organization's artistic, cultural identity and placement in the field. Do you all have anything to add to that?
I think we've talked about this a little bit, but really making sure that you clearly define your purpose and your outcomes, and making sure that you tell that story. So you know, if there's no why, if you can't answer the why and really sell that as a community benefit, then you're not going to have a successful application. But if you can identify the need, tell the story of the need, and then explain clearly step by step how you're going to measure it and what the impact is going to be, really defining those outcomes is important as you're really telling the story of your project.
You know, oftentimes we have conversations about the budgeting. And I know we talked about making sure you include a lot of detail, but do you have any other recommendations in terms of shaping that budget?
I think, you know, Iris really sort of addressed this earlier on, that there needs to be a link between an alignment between what you say you're going to do as activities and what you're going to spend the money for. And for me, it's a red herring when I read through a proposal and then I see they want to buy a very, very expensive item that wouldn't be necessary for this project to be successful. That I thought to myself, it's not being a good steward of Montgomery County taxpayers' money. That it's not like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow or a wealthy donor giving you a gift or something. This is Montgomery County, and I think the idea of being, you know, while if the need is there, it's certainly something that Montgomery County wants to help with and Culture Works wants to help with. But I can just think of one proposal that I read that they had cited something, and I thought, oh my goodness, it was an unalignment. What is the proper word? A misalignment between the number of people that they said they anticipated would attend an event and the size of the auditorium that they wanted to, and the expense of the auditorium that they wanted to have us pay for, have Montgomery County pay for. And I thought that misalignment there is a red herring for me, that while, yeah, that would be great to have that event there, but not if you're only expecting this number of people. It's just not a good use of taxpayer money. I don't know, Iris, if you would agree with me on that or not.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and I think detail is important with your budget. I think, I remember there was an applicant that I thought was actually pretty neat. They, because one of the things that as a peeve for me is to receive a grant application that says Culture Works special project grant, $10,000, and then at the very bottom and then just kind of have empty lines, and then at the very bottom put expenses $10,000, because that's, I have seen grant applications that way, and there really needs to be an time invested in that. And somebody was doing a project that required mixed media, and they had prices and they had photographs attached to the file that included just a variety of prices for particular, like chalk and particular glues and things like that, because they weren't sure. And with mixed media, that's such a broad, beautiful art that it's really hard to determine a specific price if you're looking for something that's going to, oh, this is going to bring it all together. So I thought that was really creative way for them to say, not exactly sure what this is going to come to. This is sort of a ballpark figure based on these numbers I saw. And, I think they just sort of averaged them and just attached it as part of the budget, which I thought, if that's the best that they could do at that point in time, and it was enough to cover these materials, well then, they're working to try to make this happen. And they took the investment of time to do that. So I think it's very important to also keep in mind, as it was, just mentioned, that these are tax dollars, and we take this very seriously. And I think it's important to detail your expenses. There was a question about, what if the artist, we need to know, because all of those details that are costing money are going to impact you. And you don't want that to come back and then, oh, we didn't consider this for this project. So now, this has to come out of another budget because we already committed to do this project and we didn't ask for enough funding. So I think all of those need to be considered. And again, I would work on the budget as you're working on your creative. Go back and look at your budget as you're going through your application. And that's sort of a grant thing, nerd thing that I do, as I'm going through an application. It's like, okay, well, I know this is my budget. And then just kind of go through every piece, including the evaluation, because you want to be sure that marketing pieces, everything that's included in your budget is true, or is true that you can make it at that point. So I think it's just important that there be, a lot of detail with your budget to make sure that we're able to answer those questions.
Briefly, I would just pare it down to the budget is the to-do parts of the project description and other elements of the narrative, because it costs to do things, to hire people, to hire materials, to rent venues. So as to Iris's point, I would develop the project description and implementation aspects and evaluation, like the to-dos of the evaluation. I would develop that in tandem with the budget so that they are accounted for. You do want to, as I'll reiterate, you do not want to have a disconnect between your description and then the budget. That is indeed a red flag. So make sure that it all adds up literally and in terms of the narrative being connected to the numbers. Thank you.
I think for some grant applications, in my experience last year, applicant is asking for first mile funding, and for some grant applications, applicants are asking for last mile funding. And so being honest about where you are in that process. So if the CultureWorks money is going to be the first money in the door, what happens if you don't fully fund, or what happens if you don't get the amount you were hoping for CultureWorks? And then if you're a last mile funder, saying, we already have $30,000, we just need this 10,000 to get to this great project we're working on. So I think both structures work, but being honest about and clear, I guess not really honest, but clear about, is this the first money in the door, or is this the last money in the door, and how are you going to use it? Is this a leverage, or is this a gap fill at the end? Because that's a slightly different budget presentation. It's a slightly different narrative. So being clear about that is helpful to us as we're evaluating.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I tell you, we've just got a few minutes left. And I do have a couple closing reminders, but before we do that, our panelists are very unique in their perspectives and everything that they bring to the table. And they bring a tremendous wealth of expertise to this process. I would ask for you all to consider sharing the number one thing that you look for when evaluating a project, or what is something that may set off an alarm for you in a project. You can answer one of those or both of those.
I can start. I look for, and this is not going to come as a surprise if you've been listening. I want them to paint a picture for me. I want to read a grant request that tells me this is what we want to do. And then I want that picture painted for me as I'm reading through the application. And I want to be able to get to the budget and say, yeah, okay, well, they're going to do it this way, this way, this way. And then they've got these fantastic people that are going to help them get this done. And it's going to be a high quality project, and it's going to have, they're reaching out to the best resources that they can. And it's, so, and then when I finish reading the application, to feel like, wow, what an innovative project, or what an impact it's going to have to the cultural community in Dayton. And so, it's always a feel-good moment there because you've read through the grant and you can see what it's going to look. And then it's really great months down the road to see a promotion about it and think, wow, I know what that's going to be. So that's what I'm looking for.
I would say that I want a proposal that is clear and unencumbered by whatever speak there is. Avoid cliches if you can, and make sure that it is clear. There's and I've done this, as I know, there's a fault that we make when we write. We announce what we're going to say and then we say it, and that creates redundancy and even confusion. So that means to edit, as we all do. As a professional writer, I do nothing but edit. I mean, I do original draft, but I never am, as experienced as I am at it, I never take for granted I have to edit it. And to Ron's point earlier, because we're inside our heads, we assume that if we assume that in our narrative, we assume that they understand what we're saying, when in reality, the sentence or the paragraph does not reveal what's inside your head. We don't read minds, at least I don't. So there has to be, make sure that, again, and Ron had said this, give it to someone who doesn't know the project. Actually, it could be a colleague outside and say, hey, does this make sense? Pretend you're a funder. Do we get the funding or not? Does this make sense or not? And then to answer the other question is, if it's not, well, I know not everyone's a writer. I understand that, but try to keep your editing, try to be as good an editor as possible, because the quality of the proposal can be an indication of the quality of the attention that would be spent on the project itself, even if you're not a professional writer. But we're all literate. We can all write and we can all be edited, as I am. So if it's going to be sloppy, and I don't mean don't do split infinitives. I think that is utter nonsense. I'm just saying if it's not clear, or if there's a bad spelling error, it's like, that can be irritating.
I think everyone's really talking about clarity and without being redundant, Dawn, I would just add to that. Several times I have gotten the feeling that the proposal was written by a committee, that you're a time crunch, you take question one, you take question two. We've all sat around the table and planned this, but then when it comes to writing, you write this and you write that, and then it reads that way. And of course, you do want to have lots of minds, and you want the proposal to reflect planning by the appropriate number of people. But like Don says, when it comes down to writing it, one person needs to be editor-in-chief, to take all of those ideas and make sure that they flow. So Iris will be happy. I think so far, we've all really talked about clarity and alignment.
Yeah.
I really focus on outcomes. Can you clearly define where you want to go and how you're going to get there? And then how will we know that you got there? And that speaks to telling the story clearly, and it speaks to being engaged with your audience and understanding what this project is going to do to further that relationship. But for me, it's being very clear and articulate about we are at step A and we want to be at step B, and we're going to know we're there because of C, and really having that formula all the way through both your narrative and your budget, so that we know what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to get there.
Wonderful. Well, we are actually out of time, but I've got a few last minute notes. And before I present those, I want to thank each of you, our panelists, for providing such amazing insight and answers to, I'm sure, questions that have come up for our applicants so far. Applicants, thank you for joining us today, and hopefully you will find this information useful as you're preparing your applications. And remember that you can request additional support All you have to do is reach out. I know Karen will provide some prompts, but you can request a review of your draft application by sending an email to Karen Maynor. That is Karen Maynor at cultureworks.org. CultureWorks staff will download a draft of your application directly from the portal and send it to a grant consultant who will prepare written feedback for you. It's a wonderful opportunity, so I encourage you to take advantage of that. Applicants will receive their written feedback by email by Wednesday, April 19th. And the deadline to request a draft review is today, Wednesday, today. So get with it by the end of business. The deadline to apply for the grant is Wednesday, April 26th at 4 p.m. And I'm just going to say, don't wait till the last minute. Get those in a little bit early if you can, because it can get very hectic there right at the deadline. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team here at the CultureWorks office, and all of our contact information is available on our website at cultureworks.org, and this recording will be available on our website as well. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.